Thank you for joining me today. This is the Throne Room, and you're chilling with me, Elle. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Medici. So let's go ahead and get started. So at this time, currently, if you haven't already seen Game of Thrones and you're not really a fan of that, well, you may not know Richard Madden, but I do. So he's actually Robert Stark that plays on the show Game of Thrones, and he's basically the big brother that died, and they put a wolf head on top of his head, and it was just really crazy. So if you haven't looked at some of the reviews that I've had on Game of Thrones, you might want to go ahead and check back. I will be doing some more updates on season 6 and going back to 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, as we actually will be ready to get that next season started that's coming in the next 4 or 5 months, hopefully. But going forward, this show is really, really something to watch. If you have not watched Netflix lately, they have a lot of different series that are definitely something to talk about. So this series is actually going to be more or less about the Medici family dynasty, and also we'll move forward to the Da Vinci's Demons after this series is over. So I'll be reviewing each portion of the show, and this is how it's going to go. So at this time currently, because there's definitely some talk about Dustin Hoffman. He is the father, the patriarch of the family of the Medici. Um, you know, they're definitely the godfathers of the Renaissance. Everybody's always talked about it. And then also they're definitely the family that was the Pope's bankers. So in back in that time, there wasn't very many people that knew how to take power and move it and be able to change fortunes for their family. Now they first started as wine manufacturers in some kind of way. They had their own vineyard, but basically they were really poor. And in order for you, just like the animal kingdom, for you to rise, sometimes you have to take power and run with it, and that's what his dad did. So the problem with everything that I see with the show is that power it has a price that it pays, and unfortunately, serving the family was much more important for his father than letting even himself be able to follow his dreams. So he had to do the same thing to his sons. And so Cosmo has the unfortunate responsibility of being the person that runs the bank. But before we go into that, the beginning of the show actually starts where he's in the vineyard, his father, Dustin Hoffman, and he hears a dog bark and he's eating grapes and he just keeps eating them and he's talking about how he created the wine and how his family has began to rise to power and the vine just keeps on giving and just different things of that nature, just some sort of like it was like a quote. And all of a sudden he started to choke and he died. That's the beginning of the show. And I think it's a really cool beginning because it's like, wow, he's just he died like that, just that right there. But ultimately, I feel like in this case, it tells us a lot. There's somebody that wants his father dead, and unfortunately, we'll find out soon why. I don't know why because I'm watching the show with you as the weeks go. I'm going to be watching 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 every week, so I'll be giving you a new episode of Medici Review every week. And, I will be giving out a Netflix 30-day trial with 1 month free. So if you are interested in winning, you have to keep watching to be able to get the code to win. But ultimately, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what's going down with everything on the show. And Cosimo's definitely not he's one of the brothers. He also had a twin brother that was born at the same time as himself, but he died. And that's actually in the history books as well. um, then he has a brother named Lorenzo Medici, and he's basically not worried about trying to be anything in the family like that. He pretty much is like very, very athletic, very fine, very good looking, we'll say. The guy that plays him is very fine. Sorry, I don't know what the real guy looked like, in particularly. But hey, that back in that time, you had money, just like now. You were beautiful, you had power, you had, you're handsome, you look good. And his father pretty much dressed and acted as if he had no title. They don't have anything, whatever. They had stuff, but they weren't like the kind of family that like flaunted it so much because they wanted to be meek and humble about what they've received. Not, okay, let's go buy everything and let's go crazy. That's not the kind of family they were. They were very frugal family, but they lived well. And so the situation with the first episode is that because they have a family friend that wants to be pope, and let me tell you, this guy is nowhere near being good enough to be the priest. I would say, I'm not going to say anybody, the people that do that type of thing don't need to be. I wouldn't say they have to be like the most. I wouldn't say they have to be perfect, but they do have to be the kind of person that can lead a congregation, or we'll say the church. Okay, so the pope Casa is definitely not the best choice that I would pick, being that the first scene he was with some women having sex and doing what we know is not right for a pope with multiple women. And it's going to be interesting seeing the new HBO The Pope with Jude Law, but we'll talk about that later. But getting back to what we came to talk about, they pretty much bribed other people to make him become pope. Some of them received it well, some of them did not. In that time, the Medici Cosimo, which is Richard Madden played, the guy that plays Robert Stark in Game of Thrones, which, obviously he's living on in other worlds, which is really good for me. Really good looking guy, talented. And I give the show 5 stars already, just because of the way they present it in a cinematic, cinema type, well, whatever. I can't even say it. It's like a cinema movie, it's definitely something that I would feel like I would watch every day if I could, it's really good. But it's a cinema type series. It's not made. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones, but it's like it has its own world, and they portray it in that way. So, for all those people that think that Game of Thrones is the only show out there, I have so much more to share with you. Not limited to just this show, also with The Last Kingdom, Outlander, and The Tudors. It will be definitely something that I will be talking about every week. So every week I'll have 4 episodes, but they'll be from different shows. So it's going to be really cool to be able to share these reviews with you, and also for you to go ahead and check out the show, because I feel like, a lot of people just don't know Netflix has a lot of stuff to offer, not limited to the Nick Cage, um, Luke Cage, I meant. Sorry, I had Nicolas Cage on my mind. The Luke Cage series really good too, but I just lost me at the end. Like after the last couple of episodes I watched, I was kind of lost on what they would do after Cottonmouth, so I kind of like lost interest in that. But that's another thing. But this show is actually very much the type of show that will grab your attention, keep you watching. Interesting, well written, well directed, and it's just great, So I'm hats off to Netflix for doing their thing. Um, but pretty much he goes to another place, and what happens is he meets Nicolio Donatello, which is a guy that has done a lot of work in the Vatican. Vatican actually was a cemetery before the Pope, the Pope and all the others built a city over it. It was called Vatica, and it was a city that was of the city of the dead, and the thing they worshipped there was actually a goddess called Vatica, and she was the queen of death. So that's a fact I want to go ahead and tell you guys about the Vatican and what how it started and what it. There's been some changes, but we'll talk about that in the next episode. Each episode, I'll give you a fact about what happened during that Renaissance period, and I'll also put a link below for proof that that's actually what it was. So, hey, that's kind of what happened. Is in this case, he went to another city. I believe he left Florence and went to Rome. Yeah, I believe he was in Rome. Yeah, he was in Rome. And so when he was in Rome, he met Donatello, Niccolò Donatello, and he went to an underground place where he was an artist. There was a lot of artists there. Prior to that event, he was having a conversation with his dad because he was trying to basically make a little sketch of the dome, and he said, I'll be the one to finish the family's work. And his dad's like, hey, I would love for it to be done, but maybe it's not for you. Maybe this is too big of a project for you to do, and we need to worry about securing our banking. That's pretty much what his dad told him. It's a sacrifice you have to make, and the dreams that you have to be an artist are not going to be what you think they are. After this trip, I'm going to choose one predecessor for this business, either you or your brother. So it's kind of like they went there to Rome to be able to secure this pope that was a friend of their family, so that they could become the Medici bank family that they want to be, and be able to manage the pope's money as a whole. So that makes them more powerful as a family there. Not limited to that, he'll be a politician and also a banker. So it went hand in hand. And so with Cosmo's biggest problem was he doesn't want to do this. Just like any other teenager, there's a lot of people's family that try to tell them to do certain things, and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing. But sometimes I think it's best because you live a different kind of life that you're able to take care of your family. But in this case, it's not such a good ending out of the story. So what ends up happening, he goes to this gallery. He meets this girl. It's an underground gallery of Donatello's, and he shows him different things in there about, you know, aren't we made in the image of God's image? I think that drawing in lifelike figures with women's bodies, men's bodies naked is something I want to do. So he looks at him like, what? Like, honestly, like in that time that was taboo. So he's like, okay, whatever. And so he tells him start right there. And he points to a beautiful woman with red hair, and she's just pretty. She's a beautiful girl, half naked or completely naked. I can't remember because I wasn't looking. And he draws her, and then she, comes to talk to him. Of course, he's the cutest guy in the room with the baby blue eyes. I'd be talking to him too. I'd be trying to talk to him as well. And she went up to him and said, I noticed you didn't look at me like the others did, and like in a nasty way. So she was impressed by that, and they started talking. And he started sneaking out every night instead of doing his thing that he's supposed to be doing, which would be the family's banking business. He went out to be with this girl. And so that's made his dad pretty mad. Now his dad has a person that is actually his assistant, family banker. He makes all the notes, he does all the records and stuff like that. The stuff his dad doesn't want to do, but his dad still knows what's going down. So let's just put it that way. It's like his research assistant, his assistant, whatever you want to call it. So after that ends, what happens is with the girl and him, they end up not being together because they end up making they end up doing what they're supposed to do, and the reason they are is because of where Cosmo was. He was actually hanging out with Donatello, and one day he walked in the room and he was looking for his girlfriend. He was looking for the girlfriend before all of that ended, and he walked in the room and he saw um, another man laying with another man, which is Donatello and another guy. So he just is, he told him, wow, this is just too much. Where's where's my girlfriend? And so they're like, oh, she's, wherever. And she left, and not out of the country, but just not in the same vicinity as them. And she wasn't in there at that time. So he's like, she's just not here. I'm sorry you had to see this, whatever. And he wasn't sorry, like, oh my God, like going crazy. But he told him he couldn't tell anybody about it. So what ends up happening, their father goes to Rome. They try to bribe somebody, and they throw the money. The guy comes in out. He's really on to them. He's throwing the money. He's all, you cannot bribe God, and this all this stuff. And then what happens is Cosmo walks by. He says, "Get off of here. You're not supposed to be here. You're not a pope. You're not supposed to be on the ground. This is holy ground. Get out." So he's like, "Whatever." They leave, and they look to the side. He looks to the side, and he sees the same guy that's in the chamber as his pope is telling them to leave. And he's like, okay, I got you, I got you. So they went back to their house, they did their thizzle, and then all of a sudden they came to the vote for the pope, and their family friend Costa was able to stay. So at dinner, they put something in his dinner that says, I'll tell about the man in your room if you don't vote him in. And that gets him in the Pope. And that then, in exchange, Costa's able to tell them, this is what the family that's supposed to, definitely be the best bankers in the world, on our side of the world, a trustworthy family that's humble. Let's go ahead and bank with them. And that's how they get their foot in the door. So, I want to go ahead and tell you to tune in a few days for the newest episode. It'll be coming out every Sunday, and that's 6 days from now. But hey, every Sunday we'll be coming out with a new episode of the Medici. And this week's is definitely something to think about because I do have another show coming up next, which is The Tudors. After The Tudors, I have Last Kingdom, and after that, I have Outlander. So, I have the Medici, that's Sunday. Monday, I have Outlander. Tuesday I have The Last Kingdom, and Wednesday I have The Tudors. So there's four shows, and then the fifth one's going to be Game of Thrones, any updates and predictions that I might have. So there'll be 5 videos every week. So you might want to go ahead and check us out for the next 4 or 5 weeks because I'll be doing all the series on all of this. And then, as The Last Kingdom starts its new series this next year, they're going to be doing season 2. You will be able to tune into that, as well as Outlander will be starting their next season this year as well, and also Game of Thrones. So let's get it, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I had a winner last week, which was Jay Miller. He won the Game of Thrones giveaway that I was giving out. And this series, I'm actually going to be giving out the Medici series actually to anyone that wants to win it and in its entirety. Okay, so what that means, you'll be able to get the Netflix to be able to watch it for at least 2 months to get yourself acquainted with the show, and it'll be free. So thank you so much for tuning in to the throne room. We'll be back in a few moments with some more updates. Well, tomorrow we'll be back, but we'll be able to give you that information that you're looking for these other shows. And I want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone that's became a subscriber. This is a small channel. I just started it. We don't have very many subscribers, but I'm hoping to get a like, a share, and for any of you guys that are listening right now, go ahead and share this, like it, and also go ahead and tune in to me next week and comment on what you think of the Medici show. If you have Netflix and watch it, let me know what you think of the episode so far. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back in a few moments with some more great updates. And on my next series, actually coming up on Game of Thrones, I have a t-shirt that I'm giving out. So you might want to go ahead and tune into that. Thank you so much for tuning in. And this is The Throne Room. Go ahead and bend the knee and subscribe. We'll be back in a few moments with some great updates.